Ethan Hale held up my color-coded study guide in the cafeteria and said, in front of half the senior class, "Clara, stop building your schedule around me. You are not my girlfriend." Sophie Grant laughed softly beside him, wearing the sweater I had helped her pick for debate finals. While everyone waited for me to cry like I had in my last life, I did not cry. I opened my laptop, removed Ethan from the shared folder, saved the group chat where Sophie had begged for my notes, and walked straight to the counselor's office to switch classes before the lunch bell rang. The cafeteria went silent in the cruelest possible way, not completely silent, that would have been dramatic, and high school cruelty was rarely that clean. It was a half silence, broken by the squeak of sneakers, the hiss of soda cans, the low hungry sound of teenagers pretending not to listen while listening with their entire bodies. Ethan Hale stood at the end of our table with my study guide in his hand. My study guide. 32 pages of AP government summaries, case comparisons, exam predictions, color-coded arguments, and the kind of careful margin notes I had written at midnight because Ethan once said he hated studying from textbooks. In my last life, I had printed it for him, watched him hand it to Sophie Grant, and still convinced myself it meant he trusted me. Now I watched him hold it like evidence against me. "Clara," he said, his voice calm and sharp, "stop building your schedule around me. You are not my girlfriend." A few people laughed, not loudly, that would have required courage. They laughed the way people laugh when someone popular gives them permission. Sophie sat beside him, perfect blonde hair over one shoulder, looking worried in the way she had practiced since freshman year. Her hand covered her mouth, but her eyes were bright. "Ethan," she said softly, "don't be too harsh." Too harsh. I knew that line. I knew the rest of this afternoon too. In my last life, my face had gone hot, my throat had closed. I had tried to explain that I did not switch into his class because of him, even though part of me had. I had said I only wanted a stronger college application. Sophie had lowered her eyes and said, "It's just that you asked me 3 times which classes Ethan was taking." Ethan had sighed, embarrassed for me, and told me to stop making things awkward. I had cried in the girls' bathroom until the bell rang. Then I had stayed in the same classes I had spent senior year feeding him notes, polishing his scholarship essays, staying late for debate meetings where Sophie smiled at me like a knife in a silk sleeve. I had mistaken being needed for being loved. I had mistaken proximity for possibility. Years later, when I opened a rejection email from the graduate program I had once dreamed of, Ethan had been engaged to Sophie. He had sent me a message after 3 years of silence. "Hope you're doing well. Sophie says you always had potential." Potential, that was the last word I remembered before the crosswalk, the wet road, the headlights, and the strange, weightless dark. Then I woke up here, senior year, cafeteria, Ethan's voice, my guide in his hand. A second chance, delivered at the exact moment my first life began to bend itself around someone else. I looked at Ethan. He was 18, tall, clean-cut, absurdly handsome in that effortless rich boy way that made teachers call him promising even when he was late. His brown hair fell over his forehead, his navy sweater probably cost more than my mother's monthly grocery budget. His expression was not angry. That was the worst part. He looked inconvenienced, as if my feelings were a scheduling error. I reached across the table and took my study guide from his hand. He blinked. The cafeteria shifted. In my last life, I had never taken anything back from Ethan, not my notes, not my time, not my dignity. "Thanks," I said. His brows drew together. "What, for returning my work?" Sophie's smile twitched. Ethan stared at me as if the script had been changed without his approval. I slid the guide into my backpack, opened my laptop, and connected to the school Wi-Fi. My fingers moved before fear could catch them. Shared folder, Senior AP Gov Master Notes, Members, Clara Bennett, Ethan Hale, Sophie Grant. Permissions, Ethan Hale, Viewer. Sophie Grant, Viewer. I clicked both names. Remove access, confirm. A notification appeared. Ethan Hale has been removed. Sophie Grant has been removed. Ethan's phone buzzed, so did Sophie's. His eyes dropped to the screen. "What did you just do?" he asked. I stopped sharing my notes. Sophie leaned forward. "Clara, don't be petty. We have a quiz tomorrow." "Yes," I said. "You do," a boy across the table muttered. "Damn," Ethan's jaw tightened. "This is exactly what I mean," he said. "You make everything emotional." "No. I made it private." His face changed, just slightly. He was not used to me correcting his definitions. Sophie touched his sleeve. "Maybe she needs a minute." I turned my laptop so only I could see the screen and opened the senior group chat. There it was. "Sophie, 3 nights ago. Clara, can you send your AP Gov outline? Ethan's been so stressed and you explain things better than Barons." Then Ethan, "If you already made it, just drop it in the folder." Then Sophie, "Also, which English section did you get?" Ethan and I are in Caldwell's 4th period. I know you wanted that one. Then my old reply, I got third, but maybe I can switch in my first life. That message became the rope they used to hang me socially. Sophie had screenshot only the last part, cropped out her own question, and sent it around with a caption. She literally changed classes to follow him. I had spent months denying a half-truth arranged as a whole lie. This time, I screenshot the entire chat. Then I emailed it to myself, then I saved it to a private drive. Ethan watched me, the table watched me. The old Clara would have apologized just to lower the room temperature. I zipped my backpack. Where are you going? Ethan asked. To change my schedule. A laugh broke from someone near the vending machines. Ethan's face darkened. Very mature. I stood. Exactly. That shut him up for half a second. Sophie's eyes narrowed before she softened them. Clara, if this is about Ethan, you don't have to make a huge statement. We all know you're sensitive. I looked at her. In my last life, Sophie's power came from sounding gentle while placing me on the floor. Sensitive, jealous, intense, overattached. Emotional, words that turned injury into personality. No, I said, this is about me. Then I walked out. The hallway outside the cafeteria was bright with afternoon sun. Lockers shone in long blue rows. Somewhere near the gym, students shouted over a basketball game. The building smelled like floor wax and cafeteria fries. My hands trembled once I was alone. I stopped near the trophy case and pressed my palm against the cool glass. I had done it, not the big thing, not the future, not the life, just the first thing. I had taken back my notes. It sounded so small that my old self might have laughed bitterly, but small things are where chains begin, and where they break. I kept walking. Ms. Rivera's office sat beside the college counseling suite. The door was open. She looked up from a stack of transcript folders when I knocked. Clara, everything okay? In my last life, I had come here crying after winter break, asking if it was too late to drop debate because Sophie said I made the team atmosphere tense. Ms. Rivera had looked at me with concern, but I had insisted it was fine. I was always fine. Fine was the word I used when I needed adults to stop asking questions I was too ashamed to answer. This time, I entered with dry eyes. I need to switch out of Caldwell's fourth period advanced literature and debate seminar. Ms. Rivera blinked. That section starts today. Is there a conflict? Yes. What kind? The kind that will cost me my focus. She studied me. Ms. Rivera was in her 40s, with silver hoops, sharp glasses, and a way of listening that made lies feel unnecessary. In both lives, she was one of the few adults at Ridgeview Prep who had ever looked at me without comparing me to someone wealthier. Sit down, she said. I sat. She pulled up my schedule. You requested Caldwell because it pairs well with student government and pre-law applications. I know, you wrote in your planning form that you wanted a public policy track. I still do, but not through debate. She leaned back. What are you thinking? I had spent years after high school learning what I should have chosen: data ethics, education policy, algorithmic bias, the invisible systems that decided which students got seen, funded, recommended, believed. In my last life, those subjects found me too late. This time, I was early. Mr. Alvarez's data, ethics, and public systems seminar. I said. Ms. Rivera raised her eyebrows. That's a new course, smaller, more research heavy, less traditional prestige. I want research. You'd need AP statistics as co-enrollment. I'll take it. That means dropping Caldwell and moving your free period. Yes, it also means you won't be in the same academic block as Ethan Hale and Sophie Grant. There it was, not judgment, just truth. I met her eyes. That is the point. Something in her expression softened. What happened? I could have told her everything. The cafeteria, the guide, Sophie's cropped screenshot from a future that had not happened yet, Ethan's voice, my death, my return. Instead, I chose what could be proven. I opened my laptop and turned it toward her. The group chat filled the screen. People are using my work and then mocking me for being close enough to help them. I said, I don't want to build my senior year around that. Ms. Rivera read the messages. Her mouth tightened. Did Ethan ask you for these notes? Yes. And Sophie? Yes. Did they credit you? No. Did something happen at lunch? Yes. Do you want me to intervene? The question was kind, but I knew better now than to make rescue my first language. No, I said, I want to switch classes. A small smile touched her face. Good answer. She turned to her computer. The keys clicked. One schedule changed, one future shifted. While she worked, I looked at the college posters on her wall. Yale, Stanford, Columbia, Michigan, Berkeley, schools that had felt like planets in my first life, not because I lacked intelligence, but because I had spent my best energy orbiting someone else. Ms. Rivera printed a new schedule and handed it to me. Fourth period, Data, Ethics, and Public Systems 5th period, AP Statistics Advisor, MS, Rivera. There's paperwork, she said. Teacher approval should be fine. Mr. Alvarez has room. I signed the form. My signature looked ordinary. It was not. MS. Rivera clipped the paper to a folder. Clara. I paused at the door. You don't owe anyone your academic labor because they're used to receiving it. My throat tightened. No one had said that to me in my last life until I was 26 and too tired to believe it. Thank you, I said when I stepped back into the hallway. My phone had 16 notifications, 3 from Sophie. Are you serious? The quiz is tomorrow. Don't punish Ethan because you're embarrassed. 2 from Ethan. Turn the folder back on. Clara. Then 1 more. You're making this weird. I stared at the screen. That sentence had raised me. You're making this weird. Translation. Your pain is inconvenient. Your boundary is embarrassing. Your refusal is the problem. I blocked him for the rest of the school day. Not forever. Not yet. Just enough to breathe. 4th period. I walked into Mr. Alvarez's classroom with my new schedule in hand. The room was not impressive. No polished debate podiums, no framed trophies, just 12 desks, a whiteboard covered in messy diagrams, and a projector showing a map of district school funding by neighborhood. Mr. Alvarez looked up. He was young for a teacher, with rolled sleeves and tired eyes. You must be Clara Bennett. Yes, MS. Rivera emailed. Grab a seat. We're discussing how data can reveal inequality or hide it, depending on who controls the frame. I stopped. Who controls the frame? In my first life, Ethan had controlled the frame. Sophie had controlled the frame. I had spent years trapped inside the picture they made of me. I sat in the second row beside a girl with a blunt bob and a sticker-covered laptop. She glanced at me. I'm Jenna. Clara, you transferred in 5 minutes ago. Bold. I almost smiled. Necessary. Mr. Alvarez dimmed the lights. The first slide showed 2 schools 5 miles apart. One had robotics labs, college counselors, SAT tutors, and alumni endowments. The other had outdated computers and 1 guidance counselor for 600 students. Merit, he said, is often a story told after resources have already done their work. I wrote that sentence down, not for Ethan, for me. By the end of class, I had 3 pages of notes, none of them color-coded for someone else's convenience. Mr. Alvarez assigned a semester research project: identify a public system, collect available data, analyze gaps, and propose an intervention. Jenna leaned over as people packed up. Want to partner? I was going to study scholarship recommendation patterns. But everyone else wants easier topics. In my last life, I would have hesitated, worried whether Ethan needed help with Caldwell's reading before committing to anything. This time, I said, yes. She grinned. Great. I hate working with people who say maybe. I liked her immediately after school. I went to my locker. Ethan was waiting there. Of course he was. He had never liked being denied access, not because he valued me, but because access had always been easy. Students moved around us, watching. His arms were crossed. His backpack hung from one shoulder. You switched? Yes, without talking to me. I opened my locker. My schedule does not require your approval. His lips parted slightly, like the sentence had struck him in a language he did not know. Sophie stood a few feet behind him with 2 friends, her face arranged in concern. Ethan lowered his voice. You embarrassed me at lunch. I pulled out my statistics textbook. You embarrassed yourself. His eyes flashed. I was trying to set a boundary, he said. I closed my locker and looked at him. No, Ethan. A boundary is about your behavior. A humiliation is about controlling someone else's. He stared. I continued. You could have said privately, Clara, I feel uncomfortable with how much time we spend together. Instead, you held up my work in front of everyone and made me the joke. His jaw tightened. You did follow me into Caldwell's class. I almost did, then I corrected it. Sophie stepped closer. You're acting like Ethan did something terrible. He just told the truth. I looked at her. The full truth. Her smile paused. Because the full truth is that you asked which class Ethan was taking. You asked for my notes. You asked me to explain his study guide because he said he was stressed. Then you cropped the part that made me look pathetic. Her face went still. Ethan turned slightly. Cropped what? I watched Sophie recover. I don't know what she means. I opened my laptop, clicked the screenshot, and turned the screen. Ethan read the chat. His expression changed. Not guilt, not yet. Confusion first. That was fine. Confusion was a crack. Sophie laughed lightly. That's not what I meant. Clara always takes things so seriously. Then you won't mind if I keep the full version, I said. Her eyes hardened for 1 second. There she was, the real Sophie. Ethan looked back at me. You saved it. Yes. Why? Because people lie. His face darkened, as if the statement accused him. Maybe it did. I stepped around him. good luck on the quiz. He caught my wrist, not hard but enough. My body remembered every old version of this moment. Ethan stopping me in hallways, Ethan asking for just one favor, Ethan pulling me back into the orbit I had mistaken for fate. I looked down at his hand. Let go. He did. Immediately a few students had stopped to watch. His face flushed. I said, quietly enough for only him to hear, you wanted me to stop following you. I did. Don't follow me now. Then I walked away. Behind me, the hallway did not erupt. No music, no applause. No cinematic punishment, just footsteps, mine steady. That night, at the kitchen table, my mother came home from her hospital shift and found me surrounded by textbooks. She was still alive. That fact hit me every time she entered a room. In my first life, she died during my sophomore year of college from a stroke no one saw coming. I had missed her last voicemail because I was helping Ethan revise a fellowship essay Sophie later claimed she edited. Now she stood in our small kitchen wearing blue scrubs, her hair pulled back, her face tired but warm. You're home early, she said. I looked at her for half a second too long. She frowned. Clara. I stood and hugged her. She laughed, surprised. Okay, long day. Yes, she rubbed my back once. Want to tell me? I did not tell her about death. I told her about lunch, about Ethan, about Sophie, about switching classes. My mother listened without interrupting. She made tea. She sat across from me, hands wrapped around her mug. When I finished, she said, do you still like him? The question was gentle. That made it harder. In my first life, I would have denied it badly. Now I told the truth. I liked who I thought he could be if he ever chose to be kind to me. My mother's eyes softened with a sadness I did not yet deserve and had always deserved. That is a lonely kind of liking. I looked down. Yes, are you ashamed? I swallowed. A little. Don't be. We all mistake hunger for love at least once. Just don't build a home in it. I closed my eyes. In my last life, I had built a whole life in it. Not this time. My phone buzzed on the table. Unknown number. I opened it. It was Ethan. From a number I did not recognize. Turn the folder back on. I need the notes. I stared at the message. Then I typed no. A bubble appeared. Seriously? I replied yes. Then I blocked that number too. My mother watched me. I set the phone face down. Good? She asked. Terrifying. Good things often are at first. The next morning, Ethan failed the quiz. Not dramatically, not catastrophically, but enough that everyone noticed because Ethan Hale did not fail things. He got a 68, Sophie got a 71. Their table was quiet at lunch. I sat with Jenna in the library, eating a turkey sandwich and sketching variables for our research project. Jenna looked over my shoulder. Your handwriting is too pretty. It makes my chaos feel judged. My handwriting has trauma. Same. Mine just gave up. I laughed for the first time in months, maybe years if I counted both lives. Lunch did not feel like waiting for someone to look at me. It felt like eating. Halfway through the period, Sophie appeared at the library entrance. Clara, she said, soft and wounded. Jenna looked up. Is this a villain entrance? It feels like a villain entrance. Sophie ignored her. Can we talk? No, I said. Her face tightened. Jenna's eyebrows rose in approval. Sophie lowered her voice. You're making Ethan look bad. I capped my pen. Ethan made Ethan look bad. You know he has a lot of pressure. Then he should study. You used to care. I looked at her. That was the hook. Nostalgia disguised as accusation. I used to confuse caring with overfunctioning. She blinked. Jenna whispered. That was hot. Sophie's mask slipped again. You think switching classes makes you better than us? No. I opened my notebook. It makes me unavailable. Sophie stared at me for a long moment. Then she smiled. Not the soft smile, the real one. You know he'll never want you, right? There it was. Finally honest. In my last life, that sentence would have found every bruise. This time, it found scar tissue. I know, I said. She seemed disappointed. Then I added, that's why I stopped wanting him first. Her smile vanished. She left. Jenna watched her go. I would like to formally apply to be your friend. I looked at her. She held out half a cookie from her lunch bag like a contract. I took it, accepted. By the end of that week, rumors spread that I had gone cold because Ethan rejected me. Maybe I had. But people misunderstood coldness. Cold was not always cruelty. Sometimes cold was the temperature of a wound finally closing. Ethan tried twice more to get the notes back, once through a classmate, once through Sophie, once by waiting outside AP Statistics and saying, this is childish. Each time, I answered the same way, no. By Friday, Mr. Alvarez asked us to submit project proposals. Jenna and I chose recommendation letter inequality in private high schools. Who gets described as brilliant? Who gets described as hardworking? Who gets described as kind? And how those patterns affect scholarship outcomes. It was not a flashy topic, it was a truthful one. While we worked, I began to notice something. Without Ethan, my days had space. Space to read, space to think, space to sleep. Space to call my mother during her dinner break. Space to apply for a state research summer program I had skipped in my first life because Ethan needed help preparing for a debate championship. The application asked for a personal statement. Old Clara would have written about leadership. This Clara wrote about framing. I wrote about how data could expose the difference between being seen and being labeled. I wrote about watching students with access call it talent and students without access call it luck. I wrote about wanting to build tools that made hidden labor visible. I did not mention Ethan. That felt like victory. 3 weeks later, an email arrived. Dear Clara Bennett, congratulations. You have been selected for an interview for the State Young Researchers Summer Institute. I read it twice, then 3 times, then I ran downstairs to where my mother was folding laundry and held out my phone. She read it, screamed, hugged me, and cried into a towel. That night, while we ate cheap takeout noodles from paper cartons, my phone buzzed. Ethan. I had unblocked his original number because Ms. Rivera advised me to keep communications visible if school rumors escalated. His message was short. Heard you got the interview. I stared at it. Then another message appeared. Can we talk tomorrow? In my first life, I would have floated. This time, I felt nothing. Simple, not excitement, not hate, a cautious, quiet awareness. A boy who had told me to stop following him was now turning around. I placed the phone down. My mother glanced at it. Him. Yes. What will you do? I picked up my chopsticks. Prepare for my interview. The phone buzzed again. Clara. I did not answer. The first thing I learned in Mr. Alvarez's seminar was that a system did not have to hate you to harm you. Sometimes it simply had to be designed around someone else. That sentence followed me for weeks. It lived in the way Ridgeview Prep praised students like Ethan Hale for natural leadership while praising students like me for quiet dedication. It lived in the way teachers asked Sophie Grant to speak first and asked me to take notes. It lived in the way classmates called Ethan brilliant when he guessed correctly and called me intense when I came prepared. In my first life, I had thought my problem was that Ethan did not love me. Now I understood the problem was larger. I had been building my identity inside a system where my value increased only when I served someone more visible. So I changed the system I stood in. Jenna and I met every Tuesday and Thursday in the library media room, where the chairs squeaked and the school's old desktop computers sounded like they were considering retirement. We collected anonymized recommendation letter samples from public scholarship archives, built a coding framework, and read research papers until my eyes burned. At first, I felt behind. Jenna understood spreadsheets faster than I did. Mr. Alvarez used terms I had only heard in passing: correlation, selection bias, proxy variable, qualitative coding, regression. In Caldwell's debate seminar, I would have known how to survive, smile, prepare, support Ethan, avoid Sophie's traps. Here, I had to learn that was better. Learning was uncomfortable but honest. Chasing Ethan had been familiar but false. One afternoon, Jenna found me staring at a dataset with my forehead almost on the table. You look like you're trying to intimidate Excel into confessing. I think Excel is winning. Excel always wins. We just negotiate terms. She slid into the chair beside me and pointed at the screen. You reversed the categories. Hardworking and brilliant are coded backward. I groaned. That explains why the results looked insane. Insane results are just data asking for attention. I looked at her. Do you always talk like a bumper sticker for anxious overachievers? Yes, it's my brand. We fixed the sheet. By the end of the hour, the first pattern emerged in letters. For male students, teachers used words like visionary, exceptional, leader, original. For female students, especially those on financial aid, they used diligent, kind, helpful, reliable. Helpful. That word sat in my chest. How many times? I asked. Jenna checked. Helpful appears in 42% of letters for scholarship girls, 12% for full-pay boys. I wrote it down. Helpful had been my cage, not because helping was wrong, because I had been praised for helping until I forgot I was allowed to want. That night, I wrote in my project journal, I am not here to be useful to people who would never build their lives around me. The next day, Ethan cornered me outside the library. He looked tired. That should not have satisfied me. It did a little. His hair was messier than usual. His backpack was unzipped. A pen mark ran along the side of his hand. Do you have 5 minutes? He asked. No. He exhaled. Clara. I kept walking. He followed. Students turned to look. Why are you being like this? He asked. I stopped so abruptly that he almost ran into me. Being like what? Cold. The word almost made me laugh. Cold. I had been warm for years. Warm like a lamp left on for someone who never came home. Warm like soup reheated after debate practice. Warm like margin notes and reminders and silent forgiveness. Now I was a closed door and he called it winter. I'm busy, I said. You were never too busy before. That was the problem. His face tightened. He looked down the hallway, then back at me. I shouldn't have said it like that in the cafeteria. There it was, almost an apology, not quite. I waited, he shifted. But you have to admit, you were intense. The almost died. I smiled, not kindly. You asked me for the guide. I didn't ask you to make your whole schedule about me. I changed the schedule, and now you're punishing me. No, you are experiencing the absence of free labor. His eyes flashed. That's not fair. Fair would have been crediting me. For what? I stared at him. In my first life, that question would have made me doubt my own memory. Now I opened my tablet and pulled up the shared folder activity logs I had saved before removing him. AP Gov Guide, debate case summaries, scholarship essay feedback, reading schedule, interview prep questions, research source list for Sophie's civic engagement presentation. His face changed with each item. I turned the screen off. I did not imagine my contributions because you found them convenient to forget. He looked away for 1 second. He seemed smaller, then pride returned. Because pride is often fear wearing expensive shoes. You're making everything transactional, he said. No, I'm making it visible. I walked past him this time. He did not follow. At home, my mother noticed my face before I said anything. Ethan again. How do you do that? I work 12-hour shifts with surgeons who pretend not to be scared. Teenage boys are easier. I laughed despite myself. She set a bowl of soup in front of me. Did he apologize? He apologized for the delivery, not the behavior. She nodded. Classic. Mom, what? I had a life before you. I smiled. She sat across from me. What do you want from him? I looked into the soup. That question was harder than whether I still liked him, because the answer in my first life had always been everything. I wanted him to choose me, see me, admit I mattered, regret hurting me, need me, love me in a way that turned every humiliation into backstory. Now I wanted something quieter and more frightening. I want him to stop being the center of the room in my head. My mother reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Then every time you choose your own work, you move the furniture. So I chose my own work. The Summer Institute interview took place over video in a conference room MS Rivera reserved for me. I wore my only blazer. Jenna waited outside with 2 granola bars and a handwritten sign that said do not CRY until after, then hydrate. The panel asked why I cared about recommendation language. I did not give them a polished answer. I told them about hidden labor, not Ethan's name, not Sophie's, not my humiliation, just the structure beneath it. I'm interested in the gap between contribution and recognition, I said, especially for students who are described as supportive rather than exceptional. Even when their work makes other people's success possible. One panelist, a woman with grey curls and sharp eyes, leaned forward. What do you hope your research changes? I took a breath. I want institutions to stop rewarding students for being visible while extracting work from students trained to be grateful. The room was quiet. Then she smiled. After the interview, I found Jenna and MS Rivera waiting in the hallway. Jenna thrust the granola bar at me. You looked terrifyingly competent. MS Rivera smiled. How do you feel? Like I didn't disappear. She nodded as if she understood exactly. 2 weeks later, I got accepted. The email came during lunch. I was in the library again. Because the cafeteria had become Ethan territory and I had discovered that peace was sometimes a geographic choice. Jenna sat across from me, eating chips and marking letter samples. When I opened the email, I stopped breathing. Jenna looked up. Good or bad? I turned the laptop. She screamed. The librarian shushed us. Jenna whispered a scream instead. I laughed so hard I cried. Then I saw Ethan standing near the library entrance. He had heard, of course he had. His gaze moved from my face to the laptop screen, then back again for a moment. Something like surprise crossed his face. Not happy for me. Surprise that I had a life developing where he had no role. He did not approach. Good, Sophie did. By the end of the day, she had posted on her private story. Some people get one interview and act like they cured inequality. I screenshotted it, not because I planned to use it immediately, because evidence is not anger, it is memory with a timestamp. At the Summer Institute, I lived in a dorm room with a broken drawer and a view of a parking lot. It was the most beautiful place I had ever slept. For 6 weeks, I attended lectures, coded data, learned research design, and met students who cared about questions bigger than popularity. No one knew Ethan Hale. No one introduced me as the girl with a hopeless crush. No one asked me to send notes unless they planned to send theirs back. I missed my mother. I did not miss being needed. The final week, each student presented their research. My project was messy but alive. I showed how recommendation language changed by gender, income, and perceived social status. I proposed a simple audit tool for counselors to identify unequal praise patterns before letters were submitted. Afterward, the grey-haired panelist from my interview approached me. I'm Professor Elaine Lane. she said. I teach public interest technology at Westbridge University. I knew her name in my first life. Professor Lane had been the director of the graduate program that rejected me. Seeing her now, years early, felt like watching a locked door appear before I had even reached the hallway. Your work is early, she said, but your question is strong. Thank you. Keep going. Strong questions matter more than polished answers at your stage. I held onto that sentence like a scholarship. When I returned to Ridgeview for senior year, something had shifted. Not everyone liked me. That was fine, but the story had changed. I was no longer only the girl Ethan rejected. I was the girl who got into the summer institute, the girl working with Mr. Alvarez, the girl Ms. Rivera recommended for a regional youth research panel. Sophie noticed. She began smiling harder. That fall, Ridgeview held its annual academic showcase, where seniors presented projects to parents, donors, and alumni. Ethan presented a policy debate brief on education reform. Sophie presented a leadership portfolio on student civic engagement. Jenna and I presented our recommendation language audit. Our booth was simple: printed charts, sample anonymized phrases, a live demo of the audit tool, and a poster titled "The Words That Decide Who Gets Seen." My mother came straight from work, still in scrubs under her coat. She stood beside the booth, reading every line like it was a museum exhibit. I don't understand all of it, she whispered, but I understand enough to brag. You already bragged to 3 nurses, 4, 1 physician assistant. Jenna charmed everyone who came near. Mr. Alvarez hovered with the nervous pride of a teacher trying not to interfere. Ms. Rivera brought 2 counselors from other schools to see our tool for the first hour. It went well. Then Sophie arrived with Ethan. She wore a white blazer, he wore a dark sweater. Together they looked like a brochure for future donors. Sophie smiled at our poster. This is interesting, she said. It reminds me of my leadership reflection from last year. I felt Jenna stiffen beside me. Ethan looked at the chart. You built a tool? Yes, I said. Sophie picked up one of our printed sample sheets. I remember talking about this with you, Clara. The whole helpful versus exceptional idea. It's nice you developed it. There it was, soft ownership. A donor standing nearby looked between us. In my last life, I would have panicked. Denied too much, sounded defensive. Given Sophie the emotional reaction she could frame as insecurity. This time, I smiled. Actually, the first documented proposal is in my summer institute application from March. I tapped the QR code on our poster. It links to our project timeline, drafts, sources, and version history. We made it public so other schools can use the tool. Sophie's smile froze. The donor scanned the code. Jenna added brightly, transparency prevents confusion. Ethan looked at Sophie. She laughed. I didn't mean I created it. I only meant Clara and I have talked so much about these things. No, we haven't, I said. The words were calm that made them louder. People nearby turned. Sophie's cheeks colored. Clara, don't be weird. I looked at Ethan. He looked back. This was the kind of moment where old Ethan would step in. Not to find truth, but to restore Sophie's comfort. He opened his mouth, then closed it. Small crack. I did not wait for him. Our project is about how vague social narratives erase real contribution, I told the donor. So we're careful with authorship. The donor nodded slowly. Good practice. Sophie put the sheet down. Her eyes met mine. This time, she understood I was not crying in bathrooms anymore. After they left, Jenna whispered, I think I just watched you professionally stab someone with a citation. Academic self-defense. I'm aroused by documentation. I laughed across the room. Ethan looked back at our booth, not at Sophie, at me. For a moment, I felt the old pull. That tiny, treacherous part of me that had once survived on crumbs lifted its head and whispered. He noticed. I looked away first, not because I was weak, because noticing was not enough. By graduation, I had acceptances from 3 strong universities and a scholarship package from Westbridge University, where Professor Lane taught. Ethan was accepted to Easton College, the school everyone expected him to choose. Sophie also chose Easton. In my first life, I had followed them there after giving up a better financial aid package elsewhere. This time, I committed to Westbridge. At graduation, Ethan found me near the football field after the ceremony. Families milled around with flowers and cameras. My mother was taking pictures of Jenna pretending to be a statue. Ethan stood before me in his navy graduation gown, cap in hand. Westbridge, he said. Yes, that's far. 6 hours. He nodded. You didn't tell me. I almost smiled. We don't talk. Pain flickered across his face, and for the first time, he did not hide it quickly enough. I wanted to say congratulations. Thank you. He shifted. I also wanted to say, you were right, about some things. Some things. I thought of the cafeteria, the notes, the wrist, the hallway. the years from another life he would never remember. Be specific, I said. He looked startled. What? Specific apologies are more useful. His face flushed. Behind him, Sophie watched from a distance, arms crossed. Ethan followed my gaze, then looked back at me. I shouldn't have used your notes and then acted like you were embarrassing me for helping. The sentence was imperfect but real enough to mark, and, he swallowed, I shouldn't have said that in the cafeteria, and, his jaw tightened. I waited. I shouldn't have let Sophie make you look crazy when she was using your work too. There it was, not enough to heal, enough to show he was no longer completely blind. Thank you for saying that, I said. Hope flickered in his eyes. I hated that he still thought one honest sentence could become a door. I stepped back. Goodbye, Ethan. His hope dimmed. Clara. I turned. He seemed to search for words, then failed. I walked to my mother and Jenna. We took pictures under a tree. My mother cried. Jenna made jokes. Mr. Alvarez gave me a book on data justice with an inscription inside. Clara, keep asking who benefits from the frame. I packed it first when I left for college on move-in day at Westbridge. My mother hugged me so hard outside the dorm that my ribs hurt. Call me when you get lonely, she said. I will. Call me when you're happy too. I looked at her. She smiled. Don't only share pain. That became one of the rules of my second life. Share joy. The first semester was brutal. Westbridge did not care that I had survived Ridgeview drama. Statistics became harder, research writing became sharper, students were brilliant in ways that frightened me. I failed my first methods quiz and sat on the dorm laundry room floor at midnight wondering whether Ethan had been right about me all along. Then I remembered he had failed a quiz the first week without my notes. That helped. I studied, asked questions, went to office hours, built better habits, stopped confusing difficulty with proof that I did not belong. Professor Lane became my advisor sophomore year. She was demanding, direct, and allergic to self-pity disguised as humility. During our first official meeting, she looked at my draft proposal and said, "You are hiding your claim under too much politeness." I blinked. "I don't want to overstate." "You are not overstating. You are apologizing in academic language. Stop it." I rewrote the proposal. It won a research fellowship by junior year. Jenna transferred to Westbridge for a dual program in policy analytics, and we rented a tiny apartment off campus with bad plumbing and excellent light. We cooked badly, worked constantly, and built a research portfolio that slowly turned into something real. My mother stayed healthy. I called her when I was lonely. I called her when I was happy too. Ethan became a rumor from another coast. Sometimes I saw his posts, Eastern debate team, internship photos, Sophie beside him at formal events, captions about ambition, excellence, legacy. I blocked them both junior year, not because it hurt, because it bored me to keep checking whether it did. Senior year, I applied to graduate programs in public interest technology and data policy. My dream was the Hawthorne Institute, a fictional name for a very real kind of door. Brutal acceptance rate, world-class faculty, graduates who shaped policy at national and international levels. Professor Lane had done her fellowship there. She told me not to worship institutions. Apply because the program fits your work, she said, not because rejection will confirm your worst fear or acceptance will cure it. I applied anyway with trembling hands. My statement began with a sentence I had carried since high school. The words used to describe people can decide whether institutions recognize their labor or consume it. I did not mention Ethan, not by name, not as wound, only as evidence transformed into purpose. On a cold February afternoon, while Jenna and I were eating soup straight from the pot because bowls were all dirty, my email refreshed, Hawthorne Institute Graduate Program in Public Interest Technology. My spoon clattered to the counter. Jenna froze. "Is that?" "Yes, open it." "I can't. I will throw soup at you." I opened it. "Dear Clara Bennett, it is our great pleasure to offer you admission." The rest blurred. Jenna screamed. I sank to the floor. She sank with me. We sat on the kitchen tile, crying over soup, while my phone rang because Jenna had already texted my mother despite being 3 feet away. My mother cried louder than both of us that night. After the calls, after the celebration, after Professor Lane sent an email containing only the words "well earned," I sat alone by the window. Snow fell over the streetlights. I thought of the cafeteria. Ethan holding my notes. "You are not my girlfriend." He had meant to reduce me. Instead, he had unknowingly named the door I needed to close. I was not his girlfriend, not his assistant, not his shadow. Not his proof of desirability, not his emergency study system. Not his almost. I was Clara Bennett, and I had gotten in. The next morning, Ridgeview Prep announced its alumni achievement panel for spring. My name was on the list, so was Ethan Hale's. For a moment, the old story breathed near my shoulder. Then I closed the announcement and opened my acceptance letter again. This time, when the past returned, it would find me with documentation. Returning to Ridgeview as an alumna felt like walking into a photograph that had faded without permission. The lockers were the same shade of blue, the trophy case still displayed debate medals behind polished glass, the cafeteria still smelled like fries and disinfectant, but the hallways were narrower than I remembered, and the places that had once felt like stages now looked like ordinary rooms where ordinary people had been cruel. Jenna came with me because she said no historic emotional battlefield should be entered without snacks and a hostile witness. You're not hostile, I told her as we parked near the gym. I can become hostile very efficiently, I laughed, but my hands were cold. The alumni panel was part of Ridgeview's College and Career Week, MS. Rivera had invited me after Hawthorne announced my admission. She wrote that current students needed to hear from someone who built a path outside the usual prestige pipeline. I said yes because the younger version of me had needed that too, not because Ethan would be there, not because I wanted to show him anything, at least, that was what I told myself. Then I saw him in the auditorium lobby. Ethan Hale at 22 was sharper than Ethan at 18, taller, broader, less boyish. His hair was still too perfect, but the old careless glow had dimmed. He wore a charcoal blazer and no tie. He was speaking to MS. Rivera, smiling politely when he saw me. The smile changed, not vanished, changed as if it had forgotten how to be casual around me. Clara, he said. Ethan. For a second, neither of us moved. Then MS. Rivera stepped in with the grace of a woman who had supervised too many adolescent disasters to fear adult awkwardness. Clara, congratulations again. Hawthorne is lucky to have you. Thank you. Ethan's eyes flickered. Hawthorne, he said. I looked at him. You didn't know. He shook his head slowly. I knew you were applying to grad school. I didn't know. Hawthorne, there it was again, that small delay in his imagination. In high school, he had not imagined I could leave his orbit. At graduation, he had not imagined I could choose a different future. Now he had not imagined I could reach a door people like him assumed belonged to them first. Yes, I said, I start in the fall. That's incredible. His voice was quiet. I believed him. That annoyed me. Jenna appeared at my side, holding 2 paper cups of coffee. She looked Ethan up and down with the neutral expression of a judge deciding whether sentencing could wait. You must be Ethan, she said. He blinked. I am. Fascinating. I took the coffee from her before she could continue. MS. Rivera coughed into her hand, possibly to hide a laugh. The panel began in the auditorium. 4 alumni sat on stage, Ethan for law and civic leadership, me for data policy research, a doctor, and a filmmaker. Students filled the seats, some whispered, some looked bored. A few held notebooks. The moderator asked us to describe a turning point in high school. Ethan spoke first. He gave a polished answer about losing a debate final junior year and learning humility. I looked at my hands. Humility had apparently arrived very late and wearing a nice blazer. Then it was my turn. I adjusted the microphone. My turning point was changing classes senior year. A ripple moved through the front rows, where current seniors understood schedules as social maps. I had chosen a course because I thought being near certain people would make me more valuable. Then I realized I was designing my education around being chosen instead of around what I wanted to learn. The room quieted. Ethan looked at me. I did not look back, so I switched into a smaller research seminar. It was less prestigious on paper, but it gave me a question that shaped my entire academic path. The moderator smiled. What question? How institutions decide whose work gets recognized and whose work gets absorbed into someone else's success. A student in the second row wrote that down. That was enough. After the panel, students surrounded us with questions. A girl with nervous hands asked how to tell if she was choosing classes for herself or for her parents. A boy asked whether research had to be perfect to matter. Another girl waited until the crowd thinned, then whispered, "What if people think you're selfish for stopping help they expect?" I looked at her and saw too much. Selfish is what people call you when they lose access they were never entitled to, I said. She nodded slowly, like she was placing the sentence somewhere safe. When I finally stepped away, Ethan was waiting near the side doors. Jenna saw him and muttered, "I can stand 12 feet away and radiate danger. I'm fine, I know, I'm offering ambience." She walked to the refreshment table but kept her eyes on us. Ethan gave a faint smile. "Your friend hates me. She has taste." He absorbed that. Then he said, "You were good up there. Thank you. I mean it." "I heard you." His hands slipped into his pockets. "I didn't know about the Hawthorne admission. We covered that. I applied too. That stopped me. To Hawthorne." He nodded. "I did not ask the result. I did not need to." He answered anyway. "I was waitlisted, then rejected last week." The old Clara would have rushed to comfort him. The new Clara said, "I'm sorry." Simple, human, bounded. He gave a small laugh without humor. I deserved that. No one deserves rejection. It's just information. Is that what you told yourself? Eventually, he looked at me as if the word eventually mattered. Clara, he said, I've wanted to talk to you for a long time. You had my number. I know. Then why didn't you? His face tightened with honesty arriving reluctantly. Pride. Shame. Sophie. Mostly pride. At Sophie's name, something in the air changed. I had not heard it aloud in years. Are you still together? I asked. No. The answer came quickly, too quickly. We stopped speaking last year. Why? He looked toward the trophy case. She used parts of my fellowship proposal in her own application. I almost laughed, not because it was funny, because patterns hate retirement. I'm sorry, I said again. This time, it carried less warmth. He heard the difference. You're thinking I should have seen it sooner. Yes, I know. A group of students passed us, laughing. Their backpacks bumped together. Life moved around old wounds with rude efficiency. Ethan lowered his voice. I thought she was harmless. No, I said. You thought I was exaggerating. He looked at me. Because believing her cost you nothing. I continued. Believing me would have required you to question yourself. He flinched. Then nodded. You're right. The words landed strangely. For years, I had wanted those two words from him more than I wanted sleep. Now they arrived, and I felt only the echo of the girl who had waited. Thank you for saying it, I said. He looked at me. Can I take you to coffee? No, he blinked. I mean, not now. He said quickly, sometime, to talk. No. The second no was easier. His face fell, but he did not get angry. That was new, because of high school, because I don't want to. He swallowed. Right. I adjusted my bag on my shoulder. Good luck with your next application cycle, Ethan. I walked away. Jenna fell into step beside me. How was the ghost? Less haunting than expected. Growth. We were nearly at the exit when my phone buzzed. Unknown email. Subject, Ridgeview panel follow-up. I opened it in the parking lot. The sender was a student I had spoken to after the panel. She thanked me for my answer and attached a screenshot from a private senior forum. My stomach tightened. The post read, funny how Clara Bennett is pretending she chose herself, when everyone knows she spent senior year obsessed with Ethan Hale and switched classes after he rejected her. Now she's using the story for clout because she got into Hawthorne. The username was anonymous, but one phrase gave it away. Chose herself. Sophie had used that phrase once in a mocking comment years ago. Jenna read over my shoulder. Tell me I can be hostile now. I stared at the post. In my first life, rumors had been weather. I walked through them, soaked and shivering, pretending I was not cold this time. I had an umbrella made of receipts. Not yet, I said. Your restraint is deeply inconvenient. I know. Over the next 2 days, the post spread through Ridgeview alumni circles, not widely enough to be a scandal. Just enough to sour the panel glow. A former classmate commented that I had always been a little intense. Another said Ethan had been nice about it. Honestly, someone else joked that at least obsession could become a personal statement. I screenshot everything, not because every insult deserved response, because this rumor connected directly to my work and my graduate program announcement. It reframed my story as romantic bitterness rather than academic agency. It turned my class switch, the central act of my self-rescue, back into a reaction to Ethan. That mattered. On Friday, Ms. Rivera called. I'm sorry, she said immediately. You saw it? Yes. Do you know who posted? I can't confirm yet. Her voice told me she had suspicions. I sat at my desk in the apartment, my Hawthorne admission packet open beside my laptop. I don't want a school investigation, I said, not unless current students are involved. What do you want? The truth available. She was quiet for a moment. I still have your schedule change form. I closed my eyes. Of course she did. Ms. Rivera kept records like some people kept faith. It includes the date, timestamp, and reason you gave. She said, it also references the chat you showed me. Can you share it? With your written permission, I can provide a redacted copy confirming the administrative record. Please, Clara. Yes, you don't have to prove yourself to everyone, I know. But I had learned the difference between compulsive defense and strategic correction. I did not owe the internet my pain. I did owe myself control of the frame. That evening, Ethan emailed me. Subject, I saw the posts. Clara, I saw what people are saying. It's not true, or it's not the whole truth. I know I helped create that version of you. And I'm sorry. If you want, I can say something. Ethan, I read it 3 times, not because I was moved, because the offer mattered in a way I did not trust in my first life. I would have wanted Ethan to defend me because his voice carried the authority mine lacked. This time, I had to be careful not to hand him the microphone just because he had finally noticed the fire. I replied, do not speak for me. If you choose to correct your own behavior, that is your decision. I will correct my record, Clara. His response came 20 minutes later. Understood, no argument. That was new too. On Monday morning, I posted a statement on my professional page. Not emotional, not defensive, clear, I wrote. Several posts have misrepresented a class change I made during my senior year at Ridgeview Prep. Because that decision is relevant to my academic work and public talks on educational self-direction, I am sharing the documented timeline. I attached the redacted schedule change form. Date, September 3. Requested change, Advanced Literature and Debate Seminar to Data, Ethics, and Public Systems. Student reason, seeking research-based academic environment. Avoiding peer conflict involving misuse of student-created materials. Counselor note, student-provided chat documentation showing requested academic labor and peer boundary concerns. Then I attached the full group chat, with phone numbers and unrelated details. Redacted, Sophie asking for my notes, Ethan telling me to drop them in the folder, Sophie asking which section Ethan was in, my reply about switching, then the full context showing I switched away, not toward. I added one final paragraph at 18, I mistook proximity for worth, then I changed my schedule, stopped providing unpaid academic labor to people who mocked me for it, and found the field that became my life's work. That is not a story about rejection, it is a story about direction. I pressed publish, then I closed my laptop and went for a walk. By the time I returned, the post had spread far beyond Ridgeview. Former students shared their own stories of being called intense for setting boundaries. Teachers commented about recommendation language. A counselor asked permission to use the post in a workshop. Professor Lane emailed one line, precise, necessary, keep moving. Ethan posted later that afternoon, I saw it because Jenna sent it with the message, well, the ghost has a spine. His post was short. Clara Bennett did not switch classes to follow me. She switched out after I publicly embarrassed her for work I had benefited from. I accepted her notes, her help, and her time, then acted like her presence was the problem. That was my failure, not hers. Anyone repeating the old version should stop. No poetry, no self-pity. Specific. For the first time, Ethan used his voice not to claim me, but to remove himself from the center. It did not erase the past, it did make the lie harder to carry. Then Sophie made her mistake. She posted a long statement claiming she was being targeted by a woman still obsessed with rewriting high school. She said my research ideas were common, that everyone helped everyone, that I had always exaggerated my role. Then Jenna found the attachment. Sophie had linked a portfolio sample from college to prove her long-term interest in recommendation inequality. It was my early research abstract, not similar mine. The title had changed, the opening paragraph was rearranged, but the core research question, literature review structure, and sample coding scheme came from the project Jenna and I had submitted to the Regional Youth Research Archive senior year. The archive was public, the timestamps were not kind. Jenna called me. Please, she said, I am begging you as your friend and as a woman with a deep spiritual need for consequences, let me build the comparison document. I looked at Sophie's portfolio, then at my Hawthorne acceptance letter, then at the redacted records on my desk years ago. Sophie had tried to turn my class switch into shame, now she had connected herself to evidence of academic theft. I smiled. Build it. Jenna inhaled like a warrior hearing drums. With pleasure. The comparison document was 27 pages long because Jenna believed revenge should be properly formatted. It included side-by-side excerpts, time-stamped archive links, metadata from our original files, the Regional Youth Research Submission receipt, and a plain language summary titled Why This Matters. I made her remove the subtitle she wanted, academic plagiarism, but make it humiliating. Barely. We sent the document first to the administrator of the Alumni Forum, then to Ridgeview, then to the undergraduate fellowship program Sophie had listed in her portfolio. Because the work appeared in materials connected to a merit award, I did not post it publicly at first. That mattered. I was not trying to ruin Sophie for sport, I was protecting my record. Sophie went public herself, that was her pattern. When quiet accountability approached, she turned on the lights and cried under them. She posted that she was being bullied by Clara's little campaign. She implied Ethan and I were coordinating against her because he wanted me now. She wrote, some people never get over not being chosen. I stared at that sentence for a long time, not because it hurt, because it revealed the entire architecture of her world. Chosen by Ethan, chosen by teachers, chosen by donors, chosen by rooms built to reward softness over substance. She still thought the prize was being picked. I had learned the prize was choosing. By then, the Hawthorne Institute had invited admitted students to a spring research weekend. I almost skipped it because the Sophie mess was growing, but Professor Lane called me into her office. Do not let a person from your past make you smaller on the threshold of your future, she said. I'm not making myself smaller. You considered not attending. I have emails to handle. You have a life to enter. Emails can wait. I went. Hawthorne sat on a hill above the city, all stone buildings, glass research centers, and students walking too quickly with coffee. The public interest technology program occupied the third floor of a building that smelled like books and new paint. I attended seminars on algorithmic accountability, data governance, digital rights, and policy design. For the first time, I sat in rooms where people did not need me to explain why hidden systems mattered. They already knew. During a small group session, a faculty member discussed my recommendation language audit. This began in high school. She asked, "Yes, what made you notice the pattern?" I paused. There were two answers, the personal one and the professional one. In my first life, I would have hidden the personal answer because Sophie had taught me that emotion weakened credibility. Now I knew better. Personal experience made me notice. I said, "Research helped me prove it was not only personal." The professor smiled. Good distinction. That evening, admitted students gathered for dinner in a long hall with high windows. I sat beside a former teacher from Chicago and a software engineer from Austin who wanted to regulate hiring algorithms. We talked about data, rent, bad coffee, and whether any graduate student alive understood health insurance. Halfway through dinner, my phone buzzed. "Ethan, can we talk when you're back?" Not about Sophie, about me. I looked at the message then. I turned the phone face down. The engineer beside me grinned. "Bad ex, worse, former almost. Ah, the most annoying category." I laughed. "He wants closure, he wants access, and you." I looked around the hall, at the students, the faculty, the doorway ahead. "I want dinner." So I had dinner when I returned to Westbridge. The Sophie investigation had become formal. Ridgeview confirmed our original archive. Her fellowship office requested documentation. The alumni forum removed her posts. Pending review. Then Ethan asked again. This time, he did not text. He came to the public lecture I gave at Westbridge on recommendation language and institutional recognition. He sat in the back row, quiet, no Sophie beside him, no entourage, no old arrogance. When the lecture ended, he waited while students asked questions. He waited while Professor Lane introduced me to a visiting researcher. He waited while Jenna gave him a glare so intense it should have required a permit. Finally, the room emptied. I packed my laptop. "You're persistent," I said without looking up. "I'm trying to be respectful. That would usually involve leaving when someone doesn't answer." "Fair." I looked at him then. He looked tired, not performatively. Actually, there were shadows under his eyes. His coat was wrinkled. He seemed less like the boy who owned every room and more like a man learning rooms could reject him. "What do you want, Ethan?" He took a breath. "To apologize without an audience. You already apologized online." That was accountability, not apology. I hated that he had learned the difference, not because he should not learn, because late growth is complicated to witness when you were damaged by the earlier version. I gestured to a chair. He sat. I remained standing behind the table. Boundary made physical. He noticed. "I know I don't deserve your time," he said. "Good start." His mouth moved like he almost smiled, then decided not to. "I read your old project archive, the full one, not just the parts online." "Why?" "Because I realized I never read your work unless I needed something from it. That landed." He continued. "You were always better than I let myself see." "Why?" He looked down. "Because if I saw it, I would have had to admit I needed you. You did need me, yes, and you punished me for knowing it." His jaw tightened. "Yes." The room went quiet. Outside, students passed in the hallway, laughing about something ordinary. "The ordinariness steadied me," Ethan said. "In high school, everyone expected me to be exceptional. My parents, teachers, Sophie, coaches. You made things easier. You noticed what I missed. You explained things before I had to ask, and instead of being grateful, I resented you for seeing the gap." I crossed my arms. "So you made me the problem." "Yes, and Sophie helped." "Yes, but I let her because it served me." That was the first time he did not hide behind Sophie. I gave him that, only that. He looked at me. "When you switched classes," I told myself, "you were being dramatic." Then my grades dipped. My debate briefs got weaker. Sophie's notes were pretty, but they didn't hold up. "I was angry at you for leaving because it proved you had been carrying more than I wanted to admit." I thought of the cafeteria. "You are not my girlfriend." "No," I said. "You were angry because I obeyed you." He flinched. I continued. "You told me to stop building my life around you." I stopped. "That should have been what you wanted." "It wasn't." "I know." He looked at me sharply. I held his gaze. "You didn't want me close. You wanted me available. There's a difference." His face changed with the pain of recognition. Yes, he whispered. There it was, the sentence that would have resurrected me once. Now it only confirmed the autopsy. He rubbed both hands over his face, then looked up. I don't expect forgiveness. People usually say that when they want it, I want it, he admitted, but I don't expect it. Honest again, inconveniently honest. He stopped. I waited. I also have feelings for you. The word sat between us. In my first life, I would have died for that sentence. Maybe I had. In a way, I had spent years dying in increments for the possibility of it. Now it arrived in a lecture room after my work had been cited, after my future had opened. After I had built a self large enough to survive without it, I felt sadness more than triumph. You don't know me, I said. I want to. No, you want to meet the version of me who grew after you lost access. That's not all. It's enough. He leaned forward. Clara, I know I'm late. You're not late to a date. You're late to respect. He closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them, they were wet. I'm sorry. I know. I was cruel. Yes, I was selfish. Yes, I let people laugh at you. Yes, each yes was a stone placed carefully on a grave. He swallowed. Can I at least try to earn a place in your life now? No. His face broke, not dramatically. Ethan still had pride, even in pain, but something in him folded. I softened my voice without softening the answer. You are not entitled to the woman I became after surviving how you treated the girl I was. He looked at me as if the sentence had cut through every defense at once. I packed my laptop at the door. He said, Sophie's hearing is next week. I know. I was asked to provide a statement. That's your decision. I'm going to tell the truth. Good. He gave a hollow laugh. That's all truth earns. The chance to stop lying. I left him in the lecture room. The hearing was not public. But outcomes have shadows. Sophie lost the fellowship award connected to the plagiarized portfolio. Ridgeview updated the alumni record and issued a statement acknowledging that student-created research from my senior project had been misrepresented in later materials. Her consulting internship offer was rescinded. She posted nothing for 2 weeks. Then she sent me a message. You must feel powerful. I did not respond. Power was not making Sophie suffer. Power was no longer needing her to admit what she did. The final public turning point came at the Westbridge Senior Research Honors Night. My project, expanded over 4 years, received the university's Policy Research Award. My mother came in a navy dress she bought on sale and cried before the ceremony started. Jenna wore a suit and told everyone she was my emotional security raccoon. Professor Lane sat in the front row with the stern expression of someone trying not to look pleased. Ethan attended. I did not invite him, but the event was public. He stood near the back, hands clasped, watching. When my name was called, I walked onto the stage. The dean listed my research, publications, Hawthorne admission, and community audit tool adoption by several school districts. Applause filled the hall. I accepted the award and turned to the microphone. I began this work because I was angry, I said. A soft laugh moved through the audience. I stayed with it because anger, when disciplined, can become a question, and a question, when pursued carefully, can become a tool someone else uses before they are harmed. I looked at my mother, then Jenna, then Professor Lane, then, briefly, at Ethan. I used to think being seen by the right person would change my life. I was wrong. My life changed when I stopped arranging myself for people committed to misunderstanding me. The applause came hard and fast. My mother stood, Jenna stood. Professor Lane did not stand because she hated emotional displays, but she clapped like she meant to break bone. Then Ethan stood too. I saw him. I also saw that it did not change the shape of my joy. After the ceremony, he waited outside under the auditorium lights. In his hand was a small notebook, my old notebook, the blue one I used senior year before switching classes. The one I thought I lost after the cafeteria incident. He held it like something fragile. I found this in an old debate box, he said. I took it. Inside were my notes, AP Gov outlines, debate prep, a half-written list titled things Ethan might need before regionals. I stared at that list: granola bar, printed case law, backup charger, confidence before cross-exam, remind him to breathe. I had once loved him so actively that I mistook management for intimacy. On the last page, younger Clara had written, maybe if he sees how much I care, he'll care back. The sentence hit like a hand through time. I closed the notebook. Thank you for returning it. Ethan's voice was rough. I'm sorry I let you become someone who thought she had to write that. I looked at him. He had read it once. That would have felt like violation. Now it felt like exposure of something already healed enough to survive air. I wrote it, I said. You didn't make the pen move. No, but I made the room where it seemed true, that was painfully accurate. Yes, I said. He nodded. I gave the statement for Sophie's hearing. I heard. I told them everything I remembered. Good. He looked at the notebook in my hand. I wish I had been better then. So do I. The honesty surprised us both. His mouth tightened. Do you ever wonder, he said, what would have happened if I had been? I looked at the auditorium doors, at my mother laughing with Jenna inside, at Professor Lane speaking with the dean, at the life waiting ahead in my first life. I had lived inside that question. What if he changed? What if he understood? What if he loved me back? What if I waited long enough? Questions can become cages when they are built around someone else's choices. No, I said. He looked at me. I used to. I don't anymore. He nodded slowly, absorbing the finality. Then he said, Hawthorne starts in August. Yes. Will you be happy there? I thought about it. I'll be challenged. I'll be scared. I'll probably fail at things. I'll learn. That sounds like happiness to you now. It sounds like mine. He smiled sadly. That's better. For the first time, I agreed with him without pain. Yes, I said, it is. Hawthorne sent a welcome packet thick enough to qualify as exercise housing forms, course registration, research ethics training, funding details, orientation schedule, a campus map. I pretended not to study like a sacred text. I spread everything across the kitchen table in the apartment. Jenna and I were slowly packing. Jenna picked up the map. This building looks like it judges people. It probably does. You'll fit right in. I threw a pen at her. She ducked. My mother called that night while I was filling out emergency contact forms. Put me first, she said. I was going to. Good. I like being legally important. You are legally and emotionally important. I raised a policy researcher. I expect titles. I laughed. Then she got quiet. Are you scared? Yes. Good. Everyone keeps saying that, because you confuse fear with warning signs. Sometimes fear is just proof that the door matters. I looked at the forms. In my first life, doors had felt like things other people opened for me if I behaved well enough. Now they were things I approached with my own hand. I wish Dad could see this. I said my father had died when I was young enough that my memories of him came in fragments, sawdust on his sleeves, his laugh in the garage, the way he called me kiddo even when I wore a dress. He sees enough through me, my mother said softly, and I'm very loud. I smiled through tears. The summer before Hawthorne became a season of endings, I finished my research assistantship. Jenna accepted a policy analytics job in Chicago. We sold our terrible couch to a sophomore who described it as vintage sadness. Professor Lane gave me a reading list and, hidden between 2 books, a coffee gift card with a note. For the first week you think you are an admissions mistake. You are not. I packed that note with the same care as my acceptance letter. Ethan texted twice the first time. I hope packing is going well. I answered, it is. Thank you. The second time, could I see you before you leave? One last conversation. If you say no, I'll respect it. I stared at the message for a long time, not because I wanted to say yes, because I wanted to understand why part of me still felt responsible for making the ending gentle. That was the last thread. Not love, not longing, responsibility, the old training that said if someone hurt because of me, I had done something wrong. But Ethan's pain was not because of me, it was because of him. I replied, no, I don't need another conversation to leave clearly. I wish you well, he answered. I understand. I wish you more, that was all. Or it should have been. The week before I moved, Ridgeview Prep held a small event honoring alumni whose work had influenced student programs. Ms. Rivera asked if I would attend because the recommendation language audit had been adopted into their counseling process. I almost declined, not because of Ethan, because I was tired of returning to places that once hurt me. Then Ms. Rivera wrote, some current students are using your schedule change story in advising workshops. They call it the Clara pivot. I stared at the phrase, the Clara pivot. I laughed so hard Jenna came out of her room holding tape. What happened? I became a guidance counseling term. That's disgusting. Congratulations. I attended. The event was in the library, not the auditorium. Smaller, warmer. Current students had made posters about academic self-direction, hidden labor, and choosing courses based on curiosity rather than social pressure. One poster read, do not build your future around being chosen. I had to step into the hallway for a moment, not because I was sad, because healing sometimes arrives wearing the face of a younger stranger. Ms. Rivera found me near the vending machines. You okay? Yes. She stood beside me. I'm proud of you, she said. I leaned against the wall. You helped me change one class. No. I handed you a form. You changed your life. I looked at her. That was the distinction I had needed from every helper in my story. They handed me forms, tools, questions, chances. I made the choice. Inside the library, students asked questions. One girl said she was afraid of disappointing her friend group by dropping a class. Another said her parents only respected traditional prestige. A quiet boy asked how to stop being the person everyone copied from. I answered what I could. Then, near the end, Ethan walked in. I saw Ms. Rivera notice. He stayed near the back, not interrupting. He looked at the student posters, especially the one about being chosen. Something in his face changed, but he did not approach me during the event. Afterward, as people packed up, he came over. Clara, he said. I kept my tone even. Ethan, I know you said no conversation. I'm not asking for one. I waited. He held out an envelope. What is that? A copy of the statement I gave to Ridgeview. Ms. Rivera has the official one. This is yours if you want it. I took it but did not open it. Why give it to me? Because for years, my version was louder. I wanted the corrected one to exist somewhere in your hands too. That was a good answer. I hated and respected that. Thank you. He nodded. Students moved around us. Chairs scraped. Ms. Rivera pretended to organize papers while absolutely monitoring us. Ethan looked at the posters again. They call it the Clara pivot, he said, apparently. His smile was faint. That's better than the Ethan disaster. I did laugh then, a small laugh. His face softened with the sound, and I knew instantly that he would remember it longer than I intended, so I stepped back. His expression shifted. He understood. I'm not trying to pull you back, he said. Good. But I need to say something before you go. I looked at him. No question, he said. No request, just a statement. I considered leaving, then I said, say it. He took a breath. I loved the way you loved me before I ever understood it was love. Not romantic love. Maybe. Not only that, the way you noticed, the way you prepared, the way you believed I could become better than I was. I took it because I thought being loved like that proved I was special. I didn't ask what it cost you. I felt the words move through me. They found old rooms, but the lights were off. I'm sorry, he said, not because I want you to come back, because you should have heard it from me a long time ago. I looked at the boy I had once built my days around. He was not a boy anymore. He was a man carrying the shape of his own mistakes, and maybe he would do something useful with them. Maybe he would become kinder. Maybe some other woman would meet a version of him who listened the first time. That would be good. It would not be mine. Thank you for saying it, I said. His eyes searched my face, but he did not ask for more. I turned to leave, then I stopped. There was one thing I wanted to give myself, not him, myself. I did love you, I said. He went still. In high school, in the way a lonely girl loves the person she thinks can decide whether she matters, his face tightened. I don't regret being capable of that kind of devotion, I continued, but I regret giving it to someone who treated it like background noise. His eyes shone. I know. I'm glad you know now. Then I walked away. No slammed door, no dramatic music, just my feet on the library carpet, moving toward the exit. 2 weeks later, I moved to Hawthorne. My mother drove the rental van because she trusted herself more than professional movers, which was alarming but not inaccurate. Jenna followed in her car for the first half of the trip, then turned toward Chicago. At the highway split, we pulled over at a rest stop and hugged between vending machines. If anyone at Hawthorne makes you feel small, she said into my shoulder, send me their LinkedIn. I'm not using you for cyber intimidation. Then why am I your friend? We cried, laughed, cried again. My mother pretended not to cry until we got back in the van, then cried openly for 12 miles. Hawthorne housing placed me in a graduate apartment with 1 bedroom, 1 desk, 1 window facing a courtyard, and 1 radiator that clanged like it had unresolved trauma. I loved it. The first night, after my mother helped unpack and left for her hotel, I sat on the floor surrounded by boxes. No Ethan, no Sophie, no cafeteria, no old schedule, just me, the welcome packet, and a silence that did not ask me to earn it. I opened Ethan's envelope. The statement was simple. During senior year at Ridgeview, I publicly embarrassed Clara Bennett for allegedly following my academic schedule. The fuller truth is that I had benefited from her academic labor, including notes, outlines, and application feedback. While failing to credit or respect that work, Clara switched classes away from me and into a research seminar that became foundational to her career. Any claim that she built her academic path around pursuing me is false. I contributed to that false impression, and I regret it. I read it once, then I placed it in a folder with the other records, not on the wall, not in a drawer of treasures, just a folder, evidence of a closed case. Orientation began the next morning. The program director welcomed us in a lecture hall with too many outlets and not enough coffee. Students introduced themselves with research interests that sounded intimidating until everyone admitted they were also terrified. A professor discussed ethics review. A second-year student told us which printer jammed least often. Then we went around the room answering one question. What brought you here? People said policy, technology, justice. curiosity, anger, hope. When it was my turn, I thought of Ridgeview. The cafeteria, Ethan holding my notes, Sophie's smile, MS, Rivera's form, Mr. Alvarez's seminar, Jenna's cookie, my mother's soup, Professor Lane's red pen, the acceptance letter, the posts, the evidence, the apology, the door. I said, I changed classes once because I needed to hear myself think. I've been following that sound ever since. The room was quiet for a beat, then the program director smiled. Good reason. Yes, it was months past. Hawthorne was hard in ways I expected and ways I did not. My first policy modeling assignment came back covered in comments. I got lost in the library twice. I learned that brilliant people could be generous and insecure in the same conversation. I learned that being in the right place did not mean never doubting whether I belonged there. But doubt no longer sounded like Ethan, it sounded like a question I could answer with work. I built new routines: morning coffee by the courtyard, Friday calls with my mother, Sunday video chats with Jenna, who always began by asking, have you destroyed the patriarchy yet, or should I check back later? Office hours with professors who challenged my claims without challenging my right to make them. One evening in late October, after a seminar on algorithmic sorting in school admissions, I walked back across campus under red maple trees and saw a message from Ethan. I almost deleted it unread, then I opened it. Clara, I hope Hawthorne is everything you needed it to be. I'm writing because I was accepted into a public service fellowship in Boston. The work is education access. I don't know if I would have noticed that field without your research, and I will cite your work properly when it informs mine. I won't contact you again after this unless you reach out. I just wanted to say that your life changed mine. Even when I did not deserve the lesson, Ethan, I stood under the maple tree while students passed around me. In my first life, a message like that would have become a universe. In this one, it became a weather report from a distant city. I wished him well silently, then I archived it. No reply, not as punishment, as peace. Winter came. I presented my first Hawthorne research memo and did not apologize before my argument. My professor wrote in the margin, clear voice, keep it. I taped that comment above my desk. In December, Ridgeview invited me to speak remotely for their senior scheduling workshop. I almost said I was too busy, but MS. Rivera included a note from the girl who had asked about disappointing her friend group. She had changed into an environmental science track and wanted me to know she was happy, so I said yes. On the video call, I told the students the truth, not the dramatic version, the useful one. You do not have to know your whole future to make one honest choice, I said. Sometimes you only know which room makes you smaller. Leave that room first. Afterward, I shut my laptop and looked around my apartment, books stacked on the floor, a half-dead plant by the window, research notes spread across the desk, my mother's photo on the shelf, Jenna's postcard on the fridge, a life still unfinished, but fully mine. I thought about Ethan one last time that night, not with longing, with distance. He had been important to my story because he was the first person I stopped choosing over myself, but that did not make him the center, it made him the door I closed. The next morning, snow covered the courtyard. I walked to campus early, boots crunching through white paths, coffee warming my hands. In the glass reflection of the policy building, I saw myself, scarf wrapped crookedly, hair loose from the wind, backpack heavy with books, face older than the girl in the cafeteria and kinder than the woman who woke up there furious. I smiled, then I went inside. There was work to do. There were questions to ask, there were rooms I had not entered yet, and none of them required me to be chosen by Ethan Hale.